Welcome to Life Stories, where one cup of coffee, left silently on a bench each morning, unravels a secret so powerful it brings an entire Marine unit to their feet in salute. What if the person you passed on the street, the one you never looked in the eye, once saved 9 lives in a war zone, and no one ever thanked him? This is a story about quiet kindness, invisible people, and the moment a simple act of compassion turns into something life-altering. It's about a woman who never asked for recognition, and a man who disappeared from the world until someone finally saw him. You won't believe what happens on her wedding day, when the truth walks through the church doors wearing a pressed suit and a story no one was ready to hear. Let me take you back to where it all began, before the ceremony, before the uniform salute, back to the very first sunrise. It was still dark when Claire Thompson unlocked the back door of Thompson's Bake Shop in Brooklyn, the cold morning air curling around her like a warning. The city outside hadn't yet stirred, still wrapped in the silence of pre-dawn, but Claire's hands were already dusted with flour, moving with the quiet purpose of someone who understood the sacredness of routine. At 32, Claire was known in her neighborhood for more than just her croissants that shattered like glass at first bite, or her cinnamon rolls that left sugar trails on napkins. Beneath the storefront windows lined with fresh pastries and handwritten chalkboard menus, she harbored a habit most people didn't know about, one that had earned her both admiration and ridicule. Every morning at precisely 5:15 a.m., just after the first batch of pastries came out of the oven, Claire would wrap one in wax paper, pour coffee into a thermal cup, and slip out the back. Across the street, a weathered wooden bench near a graffiti-tagged bus shelter sat mostly unnoticed. There, as she had done for 6 years, she placed the meal beside an elderly man with silver hair and eyes that had once seen too much. He never spoke, never begged, never looked her in the eye for more than a few seconds. But every day, he was there. Every day, she came. Her co-workers called it foolish. Some of the younger baristas joked that she had a pet homeless guy. A few even warned her that one day he'd turn on her. But Claire never listened. There was something in the man's posture, rigid, alert like a soldier still standing guard, that made her believe there was more to him than what met the eye. The new manager, a slick-talking MBA named Harris, had raised an eyebrow during her last performance review. "Claire, your charity is sweet," he'd said, voice dripping in corporate diplomacy. "But some customers mentioned feeling uncomfortable. Maybe it's time to consider donating to a shelter instead." She had smiled, said nothing, and simply started arriving 15 minutes earlier. She thought no one noticed, but someone had. It happened the week before her wedding. One of the college interns, barely old enough to shave, had spotted her returning from her morning ritual and whispered loud enough for a customer to hear, "She's been feeding that old guy every day for years." Total charity case. Claire pretended she didn't hear. She continued kneading dough, her fingers pressing the flour with quiet fury. She didn't care about being judged. But it stung that people only saw a problem to be fixed instead of a person worth seeing. "You're too soft-hearted," her mother had warned when Claire first got engaged to Jake, a firefighter with a crooked grin and a spine made of steel. "You keep picking up strays. One day life's going to bite back." But Jake understood. He had his own quiet rituals, picking up warm coats from thrift stores to stash in the truck for people freezing on sidewalks. He never asked Claire to explain her morning walks. That was part of why she loved him. Still, in the days leading up to the wedding, a strange unease settled in her chest. Then, 2 nights before the ceremony, a letter arrived. No return address, just her name, handwritten in the center of the envelope. Inside, a single ivory card with looping, practiced penmanship. "Tomorrow I will come. Not for cake, but to honor a debt." Claire stared at the message, heart thudding like a drumbeat she couldn't find the rhythm to. There was no signature, but something about the way the T's curved, the way the ink stopped just short of the edge, it tugged at a memory she didn't yet fully recall. Jake had joked, "Sounds like something from a spy movie. You sure you didn't rescue a secret agent instead of a homeless man?" She smiled, but didn't sleep that night. The morning of the wedding dawned cold and bright. The church in Brooklyn Heights stood regal against the November sky. Friends and family filled the pews. Her colleagues from the bakery, dressed in their finest, buzzed with anticipation. The organist played a soft, anticipatory melody. Her wedding planner hovered like a general before battle. Claire adjusted her veil in the small bridal room and peered out the stained-glass window. And then she saw him. Standing alone at the church's front steps was the silver-haired man from the bench. Not in rags, but in a suit. Threadbare, yes, but pressed. His shoes were polished. His posture, as always, upright. His eyes scanned the crowd nervously, unsure. "Is that him?" one bridesmaid whispered. "Did she invite him?" "No way," someone else muttered. "What is he even doing here?" Claire didn't think. She moved. She gathered the hem of her dress and swept through the foyer, ignoring the shocked gasps and whispers. When she reached him, she didn't hesitate. She threw her arms around the man and felt his body stiffen, then slowly relax in her embrace. "I remember your eyes," she whispered. He pulled back slightly, smiling, a soft, rare thing that transformed the deep lines of his face. "And I remember every morning you treated me like I mattered." She nodded, her throat tight. "Claire," the wedding planner hissed from behind her, "who is this?" Before Claire could answer, a low rumble echoed from outside. Tires screeching, doors slamming. Then, the church doors burst open. 12 U.S. Marines stepped inside in full-dress blues. Perfect formation, gleaming shoes, white gloves, silent resolve. The sanctuary fell into stunned silence. Even the choir stopped. One Marine stepped forward, a captain. His voice rang clear and sharp. "On behalf of Alpha Company 3rd Battalion, 5th Marines, we are here to honor the woman who sustained a hero in silence." He turned. To walk her down the aisle, Staff Sergeant James Harlow, decorated veteran, Silver Star recipient, missing in action from the world, but never forgotten by us. Claire blinked. The man beside her didn't meet her eyes, but his hand trembled in hers. And then he whispered, "I came for the cake once. I stayed because you made me want to live again." What would you do if the person you thought was broken turned out to be the one who saved others? Have you ever offered kindness without expecting to learn the truth it would one day uncover? As the organ began again, and 12 Marines formed a silent honor guard, Claire took the first step down the aisle, her arm linked with a man the world had forgotten. But this was only the beginning. Claire had never imagined walking down the aisle like this, her arm linked with a man who had once slept on a splintered bench across from her bakery. As the church filled with the sound of shined boots and steady organ chords, she barely felt the weight of her wedding gown. All she could feel was the trembling hand of Staff Sergeant James Harlow, and the knowledge that something irreversible had just changed. The ceremony itself blurred like watercolor, faces streaked with tears, Jake's steady eyes at the altar, the Marines standing like silent pillars behind them. But beneath the vows and laughter and applause, Claire's mind was elsewhere, stuck on a quiet question that had no clear answer. How much do we really know about the people we love to save? That night, after the last of the guests had filtered into cabs and Claire had peeled off layers of tulle and memory, she found herself standing barefoot on the hotel balcony, staring at the Brooklyn skyline with a champagne flute gone warm in her hand. Jake joined her, wrapping an arm around her waist, saying nothing for a long while. "Are you okay?" he asked eventually. She nodded, too quickly. "Just overwhelmed. All of it, him." "You didn't know," Jake said. "How could you?" But that wasn't what haunted her. "I never asked," Claire murmured. "Not once. 6 years. I fed him like he was a routine." "How you saw him," Jake replied. "No one else did. That's more than enough." She wanted to believe him. But something about Harlow's presence, his silence, his dignity, had unearthed a quiet shame in her. She'd prided herself on not needing stories, not prying. But maybe, just maybe, part of her silence had been self-protection. It's easier to feed someone than it is to carry the weight of their truth. 3 days after the wedding, a letter arrived at their apartment. The handwriting was the same as before. Inside was a photograph. Claire in her bakery window, her back turned, placing a small white box on the bench. Behind her, half hidden by shadows, Harlow sat with his hands folded. The photo was grainy, old. taken from a distance. On the back, just 5 words, "You gave me back time." That afternoon, Claire returned to the bakery for the first time as a married woman. The counter staff clapped, a few customers offered hugs, but the energy had shifted. Harris, the manager, gave her a tight smile. "Quite the show you pulled off," he said. "Military honor guard, our little pastry shop's got a war hero in its story now." Claire felt her stomach twist. "That's not what this is," she said quietly. He shrugged. "Either way, we've got people asking if we cater weddings." In the storage room, her old coworker Marla waited with a hesitant smile. "I wanted to say, I was wrong, about you, about him." Her voice cracked. "You made me look at myself." Claire didn't respond right away. She'd spent years ignoring those whispers, shielding her heart with flour and sugar. But now they all wanted redemption, too. Later that week, Jake surprised her. "I put the deposit down," he said, "for the breakfast program, the quiet table. It's yours if you still want it." She did, and they started small. A folding table under the awning of a community center, thermoses of coffee, trays of warm rolls. No press, no announcements, but people came. Veterans, widows, young men who couldn't make eye contact but returned the next day, and always that bench in Claire's peripheral vision, now empty, yet full of memory. Weeks passed. One rainy Thursday morning, Claire arrived to find a man in a hoodie waiting under the awning. His face was thin, eyes sharp, a scar split his lip. "You're her?" he asked. "I suppose so," Claire said. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a dog tag, scratched, worn. "He told me to find you," the man said. "Said if I ever got clean to come here, that someone here sees people." He didn't give his name. That night, Claire reread every postcard Harlow had sent. Each one ended the same way. "Each breakfast is a salute," until the last. It came a month later, a plain envelope, no return address. Inside, a second Silver Star medal and a note. "Claire, if you're reading this, it means I've left Brooklyn for good. Not because I'm running, but because you gave me the courage to return to a place I left behind long ago. I'm not invisible anymore. I'm just in motion. You never asked my story, and that's why I trusted you with it. There's more to tell, but not by me." Folded behind the note was a photograph. Jake in his uniform standing next to Harlow outside a veterans center in Pennsylvania. In the background, a child held a sign, "Welcome home, Grandpa." Claire dropped the photo. She had never known. Harlow had a family, and somehow, without ever saying it, he'd found the road back to them. Have you ever offered someone kindness, only to realize later it changed their entire life, and yours? The truth was never in the man Claire fed every morning. It was in everything he chose not to say. And now, a door had opened to something even deeper. Don't miss what comes next. Winter came early that year. The morning air in Brooklyn carried a bite, the kind that made your breath visible and your bones ache just a little more than usual. But inside the modest brick building that housed the quiet table, warmth bloomed, carried not just by the scent of cinnamon rolls or the steam from fresh coffee, but by something less tangible. Something Claire Thompson had learned to recognize in the eyes of those who came and sat without speaking. Dignity. Gratitude. A quiet kind of survival. It had been 6 months since her wedding, since the 12 Marines stood at attention, since James Harlow had walked her down the aisle. In those 6 months, the quiet table had grown from a folding table under an awning to a daily ritual that stretched across 5 boroughs. Volunteers came and went, some stayed, some left without a word. But no one left hungry. Claire never saw Harlow again. But the postcards never stopped. They came from Michigan, Oregon, even Alaska, each with a short message, sometimes a quote, sometimes just, "You'd like the sunrise here." But one morning, a heavy envelope arrived, no return address. Inside was a notebook, bound in worn leather, the edges softened by time. It was Harlow's journal. Claire didn't open it right away. She stared at it for days. It sat on the bakery counter next to the register while she rolled dough. It sat beside her bed as snow gathered on windowsills. Finally, late one night, she poured a cup of tea and opened the first page. January 2017, Brooklyn, Y. She left a note today. "Wishing you peace." I haven't read handwriting in years. Hers was careful, like someone who thinks slowly before they speak. Claire read until dawn. It wasn't just a journal, it was a map of a man unraveling and stitching himself back together. His guilt over the ambush in Fallujah. His silence after losing his wife and daughter in the car crash that left him with nothing but medals he never wanted to wear. His refusal to enter a shelter. His fear of being seen. And then, her. Claire Thompson, Sunrise Girl. She never asked who I was, just offered coffee like it meant something. And slowly it did. She cried over the pages that confessed nights spent planning his own end, laughed at his dry humor about bakery trends, choked on tears when she reached an entry dated 2 weeks before the wedding. I've found my daughter's name on a veterans registry. She's alive. She was in foster care. She thought I died. I don't know what to do. I don't know how to be anyone's father anymore. But maybe I could learn to be human again. The last page was dated 3 months ago. She gave me my name back. I'm not Sergeant. I'm not homeless. I'm just James again. And that's enough. Claire closed the journal and pressed it to her chest. Her breath shook, not from grief exactly, from awe, from the fragile power of one unnoticed act, done without glory, repeated every day. A week later, she received another envelope, this one from a lawyer. James Harlow had passed away in Washington State peacefully in his sleep. The funeral had already taken place, small and private, but he'd left behind a final request. A portion of his military pension and savings, untouched for years, was to be donated to the Quiet Table in Claire Thompson's name. There was more, a video file, enclosed in a USB, labeled simply, "For Claire." She watched it alone in the bakery after hours. The lights dimmed, the cases empty, the streets outside blanketed in fresh snow. The screen flickered, and then his face appeared. Older, yes, but clear and strong. "Claire," he said, his voice quieter than she remembered, "you never asked my story. You didn't need to, but I want you to have it now." He paused, looking off-screen for a moment. "I wasn't saved by a program or a medal. I was saved by someone who made me feel real again. You gave me back something that no VA form, no ceremony ever could. You gave me back my name, and in doing so, you gave me the courage to find my daughter. Her name is Alyssa. She's 21. She thought I was gone. But now, we're building something again." He smiled, slow, hesitant, genuine. "I hope you know this place you've built, this table you set every morning. It matters more than you'll ever know. I wasn't the only one who needed saving. There are hundreds like me, maybe thousands, and I think you're the only one who's ever truly seen us." The screen went dark. Claire sat there in silence for a long time. That night, she added a new inscription beneath the hand-carved wooden sign above the serving counter. It had always read, "Feeding one person feeds an entire life that might otherwise be forgotten." Now it said, "In memory of James Harlow, a soldier, a father, a man who mattered." On the first anniversary of the Quiet Table, 12 Marines returned, this time not in uniform. They brought flowers, stories, laughter. Jake grilled breakfast sandwiches in the freezing cold. Claire stood behind the coffee urn, pouring cup after cup for men and women who arrived with heavy coats and heavier memories. And then, just before noon, a young woman approached. Claire noticed her hands first. Delicate, nervous. She looked about 20. Brown curls tucked beneath a knitted cap. She held a small wrapped package. "Are you Claire?" the girl asked. "Yes." "I'm Alyssa," she said. "James was my dad." Claire didn't speak. She just reached across the table and took the girl's hand in both of hers. "He wanted me to find you," Alyssa said, her voice trembling. "He said you were the reason he found me." Claire nodded, tears burning behind her eyes. She smiled. "Sit," she said. "Eat with us." And so she did. That day, the Quiet Table served 117 meals. No press came, no news cameras, just hands reaching, plates passed, and names shared. But for Claire, the real moment, the one she would carry for the rest of her life, was that silent second when a lost daughter and a quiet baker sat side by side at a table meant for strangers and became, in the smallest of ways, a family. What part of this story stayed with you the most? Share your thoughts below. Your words matter. Type 100 if this story touched your heart. Where in the world are you watching from? Tag a friend and share this story with someone who believes in the power of quiet kindness. Thank you for watching Life Stories.